we come from very traditional households, South Asian household where they want you to be a doctor, engineer, accountant, a lawyer. They want you to do something very safe. They don't want you to do something creative. That's why you don't see many people that are artists and creatives and athletes, because we are told from a very young age to stay in your lane, get a really safe job. And I've been trying to fight that my entire life.
Hey guys, I just talked to Sean Kanungo. Who is Sean Kanungo? He is one of the biggest names in the keynote speaking universe. All the Fortune 500 companies, your bosses, the corporate world, if and when they need advice on disruption, new technology, AI coming in, they will listen to this guy probably talking about how to deal with the ever-changing landscape of new technology.
To me, this is the greatest time to persuade people to take shots, to take bets, to do something innovative.
I'm 27 years old, and in the last 5 years, I would say, especially during COVID, life kind of changed for a lot of people. And I think we need people like Sean to make sense of what it means today to, work in a corporate environment, have your own brand, start companies from scratch. A lot of jobs which used to exist back in the day don't exist anymore. I came into the space, when I wanted to work in digital news, and digital media companies are closing their shops every single day. So if you're a kid who wants to be a journalist today, like I did, should you be one, or should you just go and start your own TikTok? And Sean does a really good job of conceptualizing disruption, of conceptualizing what it means to take risks in your day-to-day life, so that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you are better off than where you started. So yeah, check out the rest of the conversation. This is Content for Creators, and my name is Sagnik. You wear a lot of hats, and the one which stands out obviously is someone who knows a lot about disruption. You speak about disruption, you write about disruption, you are a voice in this field. The starting question, I would say, is there are a lot of people who are hyper skeptical of the term disruption, because by proxy, this seems like something which is status quo is getting taken away. So how would you convince people that disruption is a good overall and that it's a net positive?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think we should define, what disruption is to a broader audience, to make it simple. Like, to me, disruption is something coming out of nowhere and changing the game, like changing the status quo. That could be an organization, that could be a individual, that could be any sort of entity coming into a particular industry, field, space, and completely disrupting the status quo. And I believe that disruption is a positive. I believe that disruptors come into a particular space because it requires change, and disruptors help do that. And I believe today, in a world where the world is changing very quickly, you have technologies coming out about, I just believe that you need disruptors to continuously, change things and make things for the better. And that's why I focus my entire career on this subject on disruption, because I love people that go into particular spaces and really change the game that they're playing. And that's why I fell in love with this subject, and that's why I believe that we need more disruptors, because I believe that the world is mostly made up of people that were built on an assembly line, and we need people that are bold, that they can step out and be different, and ultimately be these innovators and disruptors.
I mean, you obviously disrupted your own career. Talk to me a little bit about that transition of going from CPA, and your background is Indian, and in Indian culture we really appreciate a stable background, the job, the whole jazz. So talk to me about your thought process during that time, and what was the risk versus reward equation in your head while making that transition?
Yeah, I mean, to give you a little background, so I started my career as an accountant. I got my CPA for the first couple of years. Then after that, I transitioned to management consulting for about a decade. And then after that, I saw this power shift from institutions to individuals. This is why, your channel exists, is because I believe that you're talking about this era of the individual, which I've been talking about for a very long time. It's the reason why I left, a very traditional management consulting firm that I absolutely love. And I said, hey, what kind of damage could I do on my own creating my own content. Like I actually see myself as a content creator. And yeah, this goes back, we come from very traditional households, South Asian household where they want you to be a doctor, engineer, accountant, a lawyer. They want you to do something very safe. They don't want you to do something creative. And if you look at people that are from our background, that's why you don't see many people that are artists and creatives and athletes, because we are told from a very young age to stay in your lane, get a really safe job. And I've been trying to fight that my entire life. And how do I unlearn some of those things that my parents and my inner circle has taught me? And how do I continue push and try things that are bolder, try to get out of my own head, try to get out of my own lane, and continuously experiment and try new things of doing things, whether it's like, getting into this content space, or, putting out a book, or, dropping a special, like continuously trying to try and get out of this, like, I guess this South Asian or just immigrant mindset of like, be a doctor, engineer, accountant, a lawyer.
Yeah, and like that's so fascinating. And first of all, like no shade to any of those professions. I mean, they obviously serve a purpose, and that's great. But like, I think it's like more fascinating to double click on the immigrant part of it, is because, like as immigrants, first generation or second generation, once you have a job, people tend to get really scarcity mindset, because like, like you don't have anything. Now you finally have something, a job, a livelihood, and all that stuff. And then the thought of even risking it like remotely kind of like, like makes you question your entire reality. And I think it's more important for those folks to then take the risk, because the folks around you who you are learning from, your parents, the entire immigrant community, none of them, like they wouldn't take that risk, because they're afraid to lose stuff, whereas you now have the bouncing board, the springboard to go out there and do something different and make a difference for not just your community, but like, the world at large.
Well, let me ask you this, because, you growing up in India, going to the UK, obviously your parents were like, hey, they wanted you to explore. They wanted you to, take a leap, which, to be honest with you, many parents don't, want your kids to take too big of a leap. Your parents wanted you to do that. So maybe actually we're not from the same ilk. Maybe your parents wanted you to like take more shots.
I don't know, man. Like it's funny to think about. Like my parents did that in their own capacity, because they didn't have a lot of money growing up. So like, but they made that transition from their small towns where they were born in India to moving to like a bigger town. So that's what they could do in their scale. And then they gave me a decent lower middle class livelihood so that I can then make my own leap. So, you have to like always be grateful to whatever your parents did, and like not compare them with what your friends have. So, TLDR, like I'm hyper grateful to whatever my parents taught me, and to their credit, I'm their only child.
Coming from a household where there's only one child, actually, I mostly see that parents like grip on. They're like, this is our only chance. We need Sagnet to be like, we definitely need him to be a physician, because otherwise he's gonna be living on the street. So I don't know. I have 3 kids, so I'm playing zone defense, and so I'm trying to, with my kids, I don't want to apply the same thinking that my parents sort of applied to my brother and I. And I mean, God bless, my brother became a doctor, and that actually allowed me probably to do more of my things. But I want my kids to be able to explore and find something that they're passionate about, and try to be world class at something, and ultimately, be like just really great people. But, I go back to your question around, this idea of like working for you're just working, 9 to 5 in a particular job. I just believe that the world is changing today. And I believe that anybody, no matter what organization that you work for, you can build your own brand and you can build your own power basically working for somebody else. And whether it's creating your own IP, whether it's creating your own assets, whether it's putting out content in the world, putting out your ideas, developing a network, I believe that you can build your own power. And I think every single person within an organization should do that. To me, building your own brand equity is the most safest career thing that you could do. It is it is the safest career bet that you can make, because no matter where you go, you will still have that social capital. You will still have the skill set. So you should continuously build your own power wherever you go. And I believe that that's something that we're not taught, in school, that you have way more power than ever before. And that's part of the reason why I wrote this book called The Bold Ones, is to showcase people that you don't have to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to be a creator. You don't have to be an athlete. You can work for somebody else and actually build your own power.
I definitely want to like double click on that and come back to like the 9 to 5 aspect and building your own brand. But one thing which you focus a lot in your book and also in the special is this idea of taking risk, and how taking risks allows you to increase the surface area, which then allows you to increase the chances of you getting lucky. I want you to expand on that, because like a lot of people, when it comes to the idea of taking risk, the reason people don't do that because they have something to lose to begin with. So they don't want to be in a position where that comes in jeopardy. So how would you convince someone to take any risk, like no matter how small, and how would you convince them that there is something like at the end of the rainbow?
Yeah, I think, part of the reason why people don't want to innovate, or part of the reason why people don't want to take a risk, is because they think that something bad is going to happen. That's the mindset that they have. It's like, this is not going to work out. I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose my compensation. People are going to look at me, differently. But what we should be looking at is saying, what if this works out way better than we ever imagined? That's the question that we should be asking. What if this works out way better than we ever imagined? And the thing when it comes to, being bold or innovating is that exactly what you said. It increases the surface area for you to get lucky. Because let's say you are, creating a piece of content. You create that piece of content, you put it on a particular platform, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever. You have no idea who that, it might reach 5 people, but you have no idea who that 5th person is. That could be like the CEO of Disney, right?
Yeah.
It goes back to, you're building a new skill. You're like, oh, I want to figure out how to like play in this AI field, and you build a skill that maybe later on you'll need, nobody knew that. Like, I'll give you a personal example for myself. Like, I failed a ton throughout my career. Like, I started a mobile app company. I started my own creative film group. Like, we had minor successes, but nothing was like a moonshot, victory. But, by creating my own sort of creative film group, what I learned how to do was to like understand like video production, like understand how to do video, how to do editing. And that has been one of the biggest payoffs in my career. And although we failed in this like creative film world and we had to like shut down our production at the end of the day, like I brought those skills to managed consulting, and I was able to create like, like all our deliverables became like films, and like basically everything that I'm doing now has like a video component to it. It's incredible. Or like, I created a mobile app firm. We created apps. None of them were like massive hits, but because of that, I understood user experience, customer design, or user design. And that's how I got into like the enterprise digital space in managed consulting and helped clients with that. So every little failure was a learning, and you just build those skills and those social capital. And it's like, it just ends up being way better than we ever expected. And I think that's the mindset we should do, that we should take. And I think the most important thing is the reason why we don't want to take a shot is because we're afraid of what other people are going to say, what they're going to think when we fail. And the reality is that no one really gives a shit about you. No one really cares about you. And I actually think that's incredibly inspiring. There is nobody that is thinking about you 24/7 and saying, oh man, Sean, he took a shot and he failed at that thing. Oh, like, no, people are too concerned with their own life. They're not thinking about you. And take it for somebody who's failed throughout his career. Not a single person looks at me as a failure. They look at me as somebody that's a good person, that I'm trying things, I'm putting things out in the world, and nobody attaches you to those particular failures. So my thing is like, keep on failing, because that's not going to be your legacy at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think like the key here is like how you define failure or failing. That's the key here. So like failing is not, like your app not working, or you not getting your 9th client when you wanted like let's say like 10 clients. Like I think like failure is like just not trying again. You talked about putting content out, and to be completely honest, I do content for a living for other people. I've done content for folks who work in TV. I've done content for folks who have YouTube channels, but never in my world, like wildest imaginations, I wanted to be in front of a camera. Like I couldn't care less, to be honest. But like 2 years ago, I had this like itch of like talking to one of my closest friends who's also my client, who has a big YouTube channel. And I was like, what if we put this conversation online and maybe some people would get some value out of it? And literally it was a creative itch that I was scratching. And from that, it just snowballed. And like you said, like, who's that 5th person gonna be who's watching your video? And as it turned out, those people were super important in my life. Some of them became my business partners, some of them became my clients. And that's literally why I make content now. And it's just, and also it really helps that I love the process. I love like how the sausage gets made. Yeah, like it's so fun to me. Like I would do nothing else even if no one was watching. So
see, this is why I came on this pod. I came on this pod because you can see the effort, you can see the love. Like it's just undeniable. And once you connect people that clearly are putting in the effort and the love and putting the hours, like the videos that you put together, the hours that you're putting into editing these things is incredible. And I'm like, this guy's going to be unstoppable because he obviously is good at it. He has a pointed, incredible view. He's got some amazing guests like Sagar and Marshall and then the list goes on. You're gonna be unstoppable. So I'm like, listen, I'm just grateful for being on this pod, man. I'm grateful to be here.
I appreciate the time, man. I honestly, before reaching out to you, I did not know that you had a special. I downloaded that. I paid for it. I did not regret it at all, because a lot of people I know would like raise their eyebrows for paying for a $12 product. I'm like, what is the value that you're getting out of it? Like you spend $12 every day in your life for the dumbest shit possible. Like, 100%.
And well, I appreciate you spending $12. That's amazing. Thank you.
I got full value out of it. Like no regrets there. I'm gonna buy the hard copy as well. But moving on to something else is, in your book, you talk a lot about the fact of like winners keep on winning, the Matthew effect, I think.
Yes.
And like today people, and I think I really want to talk about it because like, I work in the news. I have a pulse on like economics and politics, and the discussion around, winners keep on winning. The rich keeps getting richer, whereas like my life is still the same. Why is it? And as it turns out, yes, there are some things we can control and maybe we should do better to make systems equitable. But there is this weird law of nature where like your wins are exponential and those things compound over life. I want you to tell the story of like how you saw Matthew effect affecting your own life and why do you preach it?
Yeah, this is like a power law that we've seen throughout history, the idea that, winners keep on winning. And it actually, if you look, let me break it down using an example. For example, a company like Uber, for example, Uber, they have, when they started, they had a little bit of success, getting black cars in San Francisco. They started getting press. They started getting funding. They started getting more customers. They started getting more press. They started getting more funding. They started, like, the network effect keeps growing and growing. And, they're a massively successful company today because success just compounds. If you look throughout history of the people that we talk about, look at somebody like Shakespeare. Was Shakespeare the greatest writer of all time? I don't know, but he was super prescient during his era, and then that just compounded over time. To this day, we still talk about Shakespeare. And if you look at sort of the fragmented media landscape today, this is why I believe that it's so difficult to make superstars. It's because it's so hard to see who's winning. And that's why the people that were superstars back in the day, like the Drakes, the Rihannas, the Taylor Swifts, the Beyoncés, they're going to keep on winning because we just go back to the winners. We're like, okay, who are we going to play, or what are we going to buy? We're just going to go back to the winners. And this just it happens in every single field where the people that are publishing the most and they get the initial success and they publish something again, it just people keep consuming that. And I don't know if it's because we are just lazy as human beings. I don't know if it's because it's maybe a defense mechanism as human beings that we just want to take the most, the safest path, and we don't want to try something new. Maybe that's something that we learned when we were, cavemen. I don't know. But we keep on just going back to the winners. And as it applies to myself, I think about this a lot. So, if I think about my career and, for example, around keynotes, like I have been, garnering this incredible momentum when it comes to keynotes. And what I'm actually doing by putting out content when it comes to keynotes is actually I'm de-risking it for a planner, right? I'm putting out content. I'm stacking up all these clients to say, wait, if we put Sean on stage, I know this is not going to lose. I know that he's not going to fail because he's already won a million times before. And I just feel like if I just continue winning in this space, it's just going to be exponential. So I'm just putting in the reps in that particular field, and I'm just going to keep winning. And I think at some point, because of the fragmentation of media, and if I keep putting out clips of me speaking on thousands of different stages, it'll just be unstoppable because somebody's going to look at it just like every human being throughout history, be like, I don't want to take a huge risk. I'm just going to pick the winner. That's just human nature.
That's so fascinating. I want to go back on the point you make about the winners keep winning, but just to give you what it feels like from the other side of the table when it comes to booking keynotes or guests on TV. As a producer previously, I had to do that for TV channels, for YouTube channels. It's so fascinating that you bring this up because a lot of times when you are booking people as guests, as people who can opine on certain topics, you want to make sure that they're palatable and they know what they're talking about. But at the same time, you want to give new people a shot, right? So there's this fascinating thing which happened in the last 5 years is instead of only looking for their previous TV hits, we now focus a lot more on their socials, on what kind of content are they putting out and how will that translate in a broadcast setting or for a YouTuber. So it goes back to 2 points. It's yes, we now know that this person will not, he's a winner or she's a winner and that we'll get stuff out of he or she. And also the fact that this person is putting out their own content signals intention, signals that this person is a go-getter and we want to give these kind of people shots.
Can you give me an example of somebody that you were like, we're going to take a little bit of a shot on this person because they maybe have not been on traditional, television, but, we saw their social media and this person is going to perform?
Oh yeah, I can. I have a list of names and names. So Sagar, who you saw, Sagar was my friend. Sagar was my friend from back in the day. We used to work in Washington, D.C. together in a news company. Yep. And I talked to him about it. Now he has a YouTube channel and he's pretty big in the space and everyone who consumes.
He's massive. He's like the new, Tucker Carlson. in a different arena, but yeah.
It's funny enough because he was Tucker's student basically back in our old job. He learned a lot from him. But long story long, he was not making content when at his previous job at all. He was just a beat writer. He was really good at it. He focused on US politics. He focused on news that was coming out of the White House. But then this crazy thing happened when he just decided to put content out. And as he put content out, he started getting more bookings on CNN, on Fox, on MSNBC. And then that
Wow.
should just like snowball. I know Sagar, like he used to be a theater kid, but for some reason he never explored that side of him when it came to his professional life. He just became like a writer. But then as he just did more content on like, because I used to be his kind of like consultant when he was making content. I used to tell him, hey, just forget about like going to the news for a second. Just take up your phone and just talk to the phone and like let them know what you're thinking about. And that will have effect as well. And all of that stuff accumulated and snowballed into like breaking points. And now he is unstoppable.
Wow. So I know we're talking about me. I'm just curious though, because you were with Sagar from the beginning.
Yeah.
And obviously he was one of the first pods. I saw the second pod that you guys did together. Incredible. But what was it like watching Sagar's rise, like from the infancy, like, and to where his influence is now? Like, I'm just curious, from you being on the ground floor when he was like a beat writer to where he is now. Like what does that look like?
It takes like, first of all, like he's a friend. And that was like good to like that was great that I can watch a friend succeed. That's always great. Like I root for everyone. So watching a friend succeed is like just a great feeling. To answer your question, like how was it like witnessing him just like catapult to like the stars? It was like I can see that now he's comfortable. I can see that he always had this itch and he was not okay with status quo of like working with the boomer journalists and only going on TV. And now he just like, he was like, he always knew that, hey man, like no one watches this shit anymore. Everyone's on YouTube, like watching the news like this. Why don't I just do this? It was a huge risk for him, like going independent, but he had the conviction and clearly had the talent and it paid off.
That's crazy. So I the other question I had for you is, because you work in, on both sides, obviously on the traditional media side and, maybe what we call new media, you understand the economics of traditional media, and the viewership versus, digital or streaming. Like you're like balancing both worlds. And it's just funny that, you're creating your own brand in this sort of new media landscape while still, having a foot in the old, like, it's just funny. You know what I mean? Like,
no, it is funny. And yeah, like to go back to the previous things, like my thesis has always been increase your surface area. And I'm not in the business of picking winners. I don't pretend to know everything about the world. So I like to learn from everywhere and everyone. If that means learn from the young YouTube guy, I'll do that. If that means learn from the veteran guy who has worked in digital forever, who has worked in broadcast forever, I will shadow him as his coffee guy for a day. I don't care. I want to learn from everyone. And I just think like that's how you just go ahead in the industry. Like I moved to the fucking US in like with no money. So I had to get in somehow. And that was my in back in the day. And I like kept in touch with every sphere.
Yeah. Well, what I find fascinating is that obviously you working in traditional media and obviously what we would call new media. And in the previous episodes, you dropped Pat McAfee and what he's been doing and what's been fascinating with, him going to ESPN. The other person that I think has been really fascinating is Stephen A. Smith, who Stephen A. Smith is also on ESPN. He's also created his own channel, The Stephen A. Smith Show, and he's playing, like, it seems like he wants to play a bigger role in YouTube. And what's crazy is that, ESPN, which is a Disney-run organization, Stephen A. Smith is like doubling down on like politics and like just like, he's creating beefs. He's like, talking about things that no Disney Channel would ever even touch. And he's doing it on his own show. And yet I just find this world is just, it's so fascinating to me.
Changing
and
every day.
I can't understand it.
We are getting super insider baseball. I love it. So the thing about like Stephen A's of the world and like Pat McAfee's of the world is, the question at the end of the day is like, who is getting the better side of the bargain, right? And for the longer time, it has been, the talent is obviously because he or she gets to go on TV and broadcast their ideas, thoughts, messages, opinions to millions of people because we have set up this insane infrastructure of cable TV or broadcast TV, whatever you want to call it. So that has been, that like talents knew that, oh, I'm getting a massive paycheck. I get to tell people what I think about, and this is my living. That's clutch. But now it's so obvious that Stephen A on his podcast can literally rant about anything and everything that he wants without any boss or any editor-in-chief like telling him what to do. And he can make as much as he's already making in ESPN, if not more, because right now he has a direct, relationship with his advertisers, with his audience. So he knows that I am the guy who's bringing more value to ESPN. So if ESPN at any point cuts me loose, because that can happen, they fired Max Kellerman last year. Stephen A would knew that I'm good because I have built my own house now.
Yeah, he actually said that in his podcast. I re-listened to it over and over again because I think McAfee was a inspiration for him, because he said that because McAfee got a deal from ESPN, they basically licensed his content, right? And Stephen A is an employee. He's literally just he's a number that ESPN has put on Stephen A's back. And I think Stephen A saw that and be like, hey, I need to build my own platform because this is where the world is going. And also I'm building my own house essentially. And I just believe that what we're seeing right now with McAfee, with Stephen A, with Colin Cowherd, with the Volume, and he works for Fox, Nick Wright's doing that with Fox. So I just see that happening across every industry. I see that happening across marketing. If you're a marketing professional, you create your own sort of channel, your brand, your own ideas. I see it in consulting. I see it in accounting. I believe in 10 years, this is going to be normal. Right now, media is the first industry where you're seeing this, but I see this playing out in almost every industry.
That's fascinating. Just to tie a bow on that, from the employers, the channels, the TV channels, the newspapers, the guys who were in charge of the ship for the longest time, even until 2015s and the 2016s, anytime someone was out there making their own content, they would get super defensive. They would throw the NDAs at them. They would throw non-competes at them. And they knew that we can't let this happen. You work for us. How dare you go out there and make your own shit? That's not how the industry works. Now they know that the power is with the people. YouTube, whatever you want to call it, the digital media, that has made the world so much more egalitarian. And you can see case studies after case studies, be that Pat McAfee, be that Stephen A, be that Shannon Sharp now. Everyone going out there making their own stuff. If I can point, it's hey, so he's doing it, why can't I do it? And by the way, if you fire me, I can find an employer. You, by the way, have to go out there again and from scratch, train an employee and do this whole thing. So I have the power. I can do this on my own. You need me. And now the employers are kind of oh yeah, okay, cool. So, okay, cool. As long as you can do your job well, do your own thing, have fun there. They have kind of been much more open to this. And that has changed in the last 6-7 years, I would say. And I've noticed that.
Yeah. It's and this was the thesis for my book. It's that the idea that the individual is now the most powerful entity in the world, and it's the idea that you can create your own power, and you can see it with Stephen A, with Pat McAfee, with Colin Cowherd. You can see it with Andrew Schultz with what he's done in comedy. Obviously, you broke it down with Joel in one of episodes, basically. He not being beholden to the comedy clubs, not being beholden to the streamers, and him and Andrew Schultz doing his own thing. The power is in the people, and once you have the people, you can almost do anything and say anything, and it's incredible. And I think that's happening across so many different industries. I mean, I'm a nano creator. Okay, there are micro creators. I'm a nano creator. I'm a B2B creator. I'm you have Kim Kardashian with Skims, Logan Paul with Prime. I'm the creator for the finance manager. I'm the Logan Paul for accountants. Okay, so I'm in a B2B field, but although I'm not a massive popular creator, I have a very small niche of people that trust me, and that's why I'm starting to get, brand deals. I'm starting to build my own audience in a very small niche in this sort of corporate sort of innovation world. And it's really funny to see. Like, I think there'll be, although we talk about the Stephen A's and the Pat McAfee's and the, Logan Pauls and Andrew Schultz out there's going to be people like me that are building their own brand for a very small niche that will also create impact and create incredible revenue, serving this B2B audience, which I think is probably the biggest white space out there.
Correct.
B2B creators, B2B influencers, it's just unstoppable. And if you want to play in this space, it's just complete white space.
I think that's a really important message to get across, especially to people who are coming in the space, like kids or whatever, because a lot of times the only example or case studies in front of them are the Logan Pauls of the world, and it's really daunting, right? Because then you're thinking oh my God, I can never beat that guy, right? And you're thinking I can never reach that level of stardom. Whereas, as it turns out, it is much more achievable, not in a complacent way, but in a pragmatic way to approach professions and life and creativity if you serve a niche of audience. Look at Colin and Samir. Colin and Samir have people like them. It's they can go out and walk in the streets and no one would recognize them, but people who do recognize them, let's say in a creator economy summit in Brooklyn, they are the superstars there. And as it turns out, those people, by the nature of your content and the fact that you're serving a really specific, hyper intentional audience, you will get better brand deals. Because brands don't want
100%.
a million. Yeah, brands don't want a million viewers who just watch prank videos. The brands would rather have 10,000 viewers who would subscribe to a SaaS product or whatever.
Such a good example that you brought up Colin and Samir, because Colin and Samir are an incredible example of creator product fit, right? They were floating for years. I followed them for years. They were talking about lacrosse, and they were talking about they were doing stuff in their car, and it was just great. And then once they just zeroed in, they were 110% on creators, on doubling down on creators, interviewing creators, creating creator support. Their channel absolutely blew up, and their brand blew up, and they were able to generate, as you said, brand deals that are completely focused on their particular niche. And they got a massive channel. Their channel is so huge, and they've grown so exponentially because I feel like they've been so focused, and it's just been incredible.
No, yeah, I think that's where the internet is right now. There is no one big culture. There is all these pockets of subcultures. The people I'm fans of, my girlfriend doesn't know who they are. If I'm watching 100%. And what she watches, I have no clue who they are. So I think that's just that's where the internet is, and that's the state of the union of how the digital culture, where the digital culture is headed. And I think that's a good spot.
And I think this is great. I think it's fascinating, and I think it's great. So obviously you had somebody basically creating GunTube, people that are into fishing, people that are into, whatever field that you're into. I mean, you could build your own audience and monetize from that. But I just want to say that this B2B world, you know how many software companies there are? Do you know how many finance companies there are? Do you know how many it's just incredible. And guess what? They're just like any other company. They're trying to get attention. They need distribution. And the only way to do that is through individuals. How are you going to get in front of a CIO, a CXO, the chief, the CHRO? You're going to do it through individuals and it's just complete white space.
No, that's such a good point. The fact that they too need a loudspeaker and an accounting firm, if they want to spread the word for their firm and their services, will they just randomly write a LinkedIn post, or will they hire you? right?
Right.
So, so I think like that's a really important point. And yeah, like if you're like
And
TLDR,
I actually I want you to edit this out because I don't want people to
100%,
find out
yeah.
that this is such a white space, man. Like it's there for the taking. If you're passionate about business, if you're passionate about like a very small niche like I am around innovation and disruption, like you can create an incredible business creating content in that particular niche.
I know. And like, again, like if you're a creator, if you're getting in the space, trust me when I say this, I know so many people who have like 10,000 subscribers or whatever, but they serve a niche audience and they're raking in the bag, right? You're just getting the bag every day because they're serving to folks who have money. And and instead of like romanticizing making like a 1 million subscriber channel of like prank videos and jokes, which is fine. If you want to do that, that's what gives you happiness, that's fine. But if you want to make this your living, there's a much better, faster, easier, I would say, and much more fulfilling way to do it, which is serving a group of people and just become like a, as they call it, like a micro influencer. And like that's viable. That can be a career.
100%. Like I, as an example, like I don't have a massive following across all my social channels, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, IG. I probably have like maybe like 100,000 followers, but I have on LinkedIn, I have about 18,000 followers. And I believe that every single one of those followers, I would trade one LinkedIn follower for like 10,000 TikTok followers.
Oh my God, any day. Yeah.
The amount of value that I get from that one person, it's incredible, right? Like TikTok, you're not even building a relationship with them, right? But I've been very diligent in terms of like creating a video like almost every week on LinkedIn for like 5 years and just slowly building up an audience and building trust and engagement. And they know that I'm delivering value on this platform that everybody thinks it's cringy, but everyone's on it. And some of the most all the business people that you know are on LinkedIn, whether you like it or not, whether it's cringy or not, which it is, but like it's there. Everyone's on it.
Yeah, and like just to like closing thoughts on this, because I really want to talk to you about a bunch of stuff. Like like TikTok, I think like Colin and Samir talk about this as well. TikTok is like what it used to feel like when you were like surfing channels back in the day, because you're not paying attention. It's a lean back experience. You're leaning away from the TV, just like scrolling through what's there. You don't give a shit about like what channel you surfed on for like 10 seconds, right? Whereas anytime I see Sean's videos on Instagram, on LinkedIn, I'm leaning forward because I care about this person. And he's just not dancing for me on TikTok like everyone else is. So I have to give a shit about what you're saying, the words that are coming out of your mouth. So I'm hyper intentional about consuming your stuff.
And it's funny because like I have 51,000 people on TikTok, and I swear to God, if I walk down the street and all 51,000 people were there, I don't think a single person would stop me or recognize me because or care about me, because there is no affinity there. Like people are not waiting for your content on TikTok. You're not building that relationship. And that's why I believe that YouTube is the truth. It's like podcasts, YouTube, anything that's long form is the truth. That's why podcasters can create, they have such a deep people have such a deep loyalty to podcasters because you're listening to them all day long. And they can like sell out. The greatest test is can you sell out like a show? And what's been fascinating is watching people like Alex Earl or even like in the sports realm, like Ryan Russillo or Rory and Mal, they're hip hop podcasters, or Joe Budden. Like they can sell out theaters. They can sell out theaters just based on their podcast. JJ Redick, like remarkable. Sam, business podcaster Sam Parr and Sean Puri. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is incredible loyalty and affinity. And that's why I believe that YouTube, podcasts, anything that's long form, authentic, genuine is the truth.
Let's move on to something which you talk about a lot, which is innovation, right? And it's a pretty general word, I would say, but it carries so much weight if you actually think about it. I think Simon Sinek said innovation is not efficient. And I think that really stuck with me because for the longest time, people who have sold innovation is like, it's gonna change it's gonna change your stuff for the better. But that's not always the case right away, because to innovate, you're taking risks, you're trying out new stuff. So talk to me about that balance when someone, let's say they're convinced by what you're saying. What are you in for? Like, what's the road ahead while innovating? Because it's not always hunky-dory.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I love that piece when Simon Sinek saying that innovation is not efficient. I believe the same thing. I think there's a couple of myths when it comes to innovation. Number one is that when people think about innovation, they often think about it as being technology-based, that innovation is just technology. And if I had a billboard, I would put innovation is not technology. Innovation, I believe, is 90% psychological and 10% technological. Yes, you have the 10% of technology, whether it's new changes, generative AI, cloud, mobile, digital, like those are certainly innovative technologies. But 90% of innovation is like, how do we address those human behaviors? There are two types of changes. There are radical changes. Those are like the generative AI, digital, mobile, cloud, quantum computing. And then there's the radical unchanges. Those are things that never change. Things like our love for stories, desire for status, our rising expectations for convenience, our intimacy, wanting things that are, magical and surprising. Those things will never change. Those things have been around for 200,000 years as human beings. Those behaviors have never changed. But it's like, how do we continuously innovate on those things and make those things better? Because the difficulty level to make things faster and easier, it just gets harder. So we still need to innovate on those things. So I think that's one of the biggest myths. The other myth when it comes to innovation is that many people think that innovation is like this big transformative thing. I need to invent the iPhone, when innovation can be small. It could be like, how do I just make something better? How do I create value in new ways? And going back to your idea about, your question about risk, I think one of the things that people think about when they think about innovation is they always think about innovation as the outcomes. They're thinking about new revenue, they're brainstorming, new services, new funding. I'm trying something new. When to me, that's part of innovation. But innovation is also about, are you willing to be the innovator? Like, are you willing to look like a joke? Are you willing to disrupt? Are you willing to go through the pain of trying something new while everyone thinks like that you're an idiot? Are you willing to do that? Because if you are, then you are willing to innovate at the end of the day. And I think innovation is less about the outcomes and it's more about your identity. It's, are you willing to be the innovator? And I think that's the question that you should be asking yourself. And that's why innovation is not efficient. It's not just seamless. It's tough. You have to go through the grind. You have to ask yourself, are you willing to struggle? And that's why most people don't innovate, because it's hard and you might look like a joke.
It's much more intrinsic than it is outcome based. And I think that's like a fascinating way of looking at it. One thing about like innovations and new technology and new inventions, and you tell me if you agree or disagree with this, is for the longest time during the industrial age and after that till the early 2000s, innovation at scale made people's lives better, right? Be that coming up with the first iPhone, be that, simple things that we take granted for today, like electricity, refrigerators, TVs, medicine, healthcare, all this stuff were making people's lives better. And today, it feels like innovation at scale, at mass, isn't making that much difference for day-to-day life, unless you are tuned in. Like you and I are tuned in, we know how much effect AI will have in the next 10 years. We know how much crypto, regardless of the ups and downs, will affect how we think about economy in the next 10 years. But for public writ large and for the general mass, there is a feeling that innovation is, like not making our lives better like back in the day it used to. A, do you agree with that? And B, how would you address that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would I would largely disagree with that. I think innovation has always made our lives better. The problem now is that our baseline expectations keep getting higher.
Hi,
I mean,
fascinating.
because of innovation, we've created all these incredible industries. Because of innovation, people like you and me can talk. You're in New York, I'm in Canada. We're talking on this. I mean,
insane,
and this piece of content is going to go all the way in the world, and somebody in Bangladesh is going to pick this up and be like, "This is great."
Yeah,
Like,
we can't take any of this for granted. Yeah.
No, I mean innovation. We do, but the problem is we do take it for granted. We do take it for granted that all these things are coming up, and let's be honest. Like we've especially in the Western world. I mean, you could tap a button, you get food delivered to your door. You don't have to interact with a person that made the food or deliver the food. You tap a button, you can get things thrown at your door, and you don't have to interact with a soul to get it. Like we've made the world so easy, and yet we're so unhappy. Our baseline expectations keep rising. And the truth is that we live longer, we're healthier, we're better, yet we're still unhappy. That's because we're ungrateful. Our happiness is simply based on our expectations. But, going back to if we think about technology has always made our lives better. And the idea of making our lives better, safer, healthier is one thing. Happiness is another thing. I would argue that we were probably happier when we had nothing. We were probably happier when we were hunter-gatherers. Before the agricultural revolution, we were probably happier because we had less to worry about. We didn't have to deal with looking at somebody's Instagram page and saying, this person has this car, and this person has this house, and this person has this many friends. We were probably happier way back in the day. So living a better life or stronger life, we absolutely have today, but our expectations have become wildly unreasonable, and we are unhappier today because of that. So technology has always been a blessing and a curse in that way.
That's fascinating. Yeah, like they were not worried about like Instagram likes. They were worried about the saber tooth. And
Exactly.
But speaking of like happiness, that's something which people questioned a lot. People really had to question how they like life basically. And that happened during COVID a lot, which I went through because I'm 27. And as I was coming into the space, this crazy thing which happened, which like stopped the whole world. And people started to like rethink what happiness means, rethink that should I commute 2 hours to work, like all that stuff. What effect do you think that had at scale? And now that like we are rethinking like what it means to work, would I rather spend my time with my wife rather than like going to office every day? Like what does happiness mean to me? Like that's, I think like that was the time when people started rethinking like creating my own brand, because now that I have time to do that. And there was the move of like the anti-hustle culture, pushing back against the corporate stuff, quiet quitting, all the names. So what effect do you think like that time had during the economy, the work culture, corporate life writ large?
It's a fascinating question, and I feel like we're not even past that time yet, and to really, really give the deep dive of the impact of COVID. The easy answer is to say that we really reflected on what it means to be human and what work really means, and we've changed our perspective on everything. Now, during the time when you're sitting at home, with your kids in your studio apartment in New York, you're definitely contemplating life at that point. And I know a lot of people did. There were studies like from Oracle from 2021 that said 88% of people thought about how they redefine what success meant to them. But actually, if you look at it, and we're in 2024, we're a couple of years out from the pandemic, what actually changed? What actually changed? I mean, other than remote work, which is everyone's already pushing back against, and I believe that remote work is actually terrible for innovation. Other than remote work being a constant, what changed? I mean, and I just believe that the pandemic was great for some people because it taught them that they could do something, and they they could do something different. It taught them how to leverage digital and jump on Zoom and do these things. Like, it taught them some new skills. But fundamentally, from a human behavior perspective, and how we look at work or success, did it really change everything? Like, I'm here to ask the question, did it really change everything? Because to me, if I look at people and how they work today, I actually think that we've kind of bounced back to what we were back in 2019. Other than the whole hybrid remote piece, which seems to be a constant debate still. So I don't know. I mean, I'm asking the question, did everything change?
No, I think, like, I would say, and I don't study human evolution and all that stuff, but, like, I'm just, like, speaking from experience and, like, just watching my friends. What happened a lot was a lot of folks who always by default thought that I need to be in a big city. I need to, work at the biggest company, be in the biggest city, and that's going to be my life. Apartment, expensive, commute, and all that stuff. All of which I subscribe to, by the way, and I fought a lot to have this baseline, the lowest tier of Maslow's hierarchy. I subscribe to all of that, so I'm not pushing back against that. But I know a lot of people who did, and when the whole world came collapsing, they were like, oh, I can just literally, like, live in, like, bumfuck Colorado, nowhere, and I'll be much happier if I did that because I get to live closer to my parents, and at the same time I can be at my house and work remotely and get a New York paycheck. I think that's the thing which happened. I don't want that life, by the way. I want this life. I'm super happy with where I am. But a lot of people did subscribe to that.
But so people did subscribe to it, but I think now you're seeing organizations say, hey, we need people to come back to the office.
Correct,
because
yeah.
they're seeing that remote is difficult when it comes to innovation. It's difficult when you're not seeing people eye to eye. Listen, most of business is like working on really hard problems, and you can only really do that when you're working in person. There are some industries where you can just do it remotely, but I think we're having that reckoning now. Literally in the New York, I was listening to an episode of The Daily. They broke down it's called the title of the pod was The Hybrid Work Malaise. And guess what? I always knew this, that remote work was terrible for long-term innovation. But we're having that discussion now. And I think organizations are saying, hey, how do we get people back into the office? Listen, remote work is great because for workers, because it's like it's like eating cake. Yeah, cake is great. You can enjoy cake. Cake is awesome. If it's right there in the fridge, you can have it. Going into work, commuting for an hour, like that's a lot of pain. But guess what? Life is painful. Work is painful. And sometimes you just need to get into work and into the office so that you can work on hard problems with actual people and develop real relationships and look people in the eye and I just think that's so important. We've lost that. And I believe that we get disproportionate value when we meet people in person and we build relationships and trust. And you can only do that really in person.
I would definitely clip this out for LinkedIn, which is, I want you to answer this question really specifically. If you were to give advice to be that corporate America or be that a new startup, what should their approach be to the remote work versus come to office in terms of setting a culture?
This is going to be super unpopular, but I believe that everyone should be at the office, but the policy should be flexible. If you need to pick up your kid at 3 o'clock or at noon, like my kid, I have a 7-year-old and 4-year-old and an 11-month-year-old. If I need to go and pick up my kid at 3 o'clock, I should be able to go. If my youngest is sick, I should be able to, make sure that I take care of, my child. If you're sick, I think what we learned through COVID, maybe if you're sick, you should stay home. But barring that, you should be at the office, and at the same time, you should be flexible. And maybe I'm biased because I worked at a firm for 12 years, and that was a policy. You're in the office, or, by the way, we're flexible. As a manager, as a leader, I'm like, you just have to be flexible. So instead of saying remote work, hybrid work, blah, blah, like, just be flexible, just be human. Like, why do we assume that like this wasn't the case before? Listen, in some jobs it may not be the case, but in most jobs, in most white collar jobs, there was that flexibility. And I just think that number one, having people in the office and having that culture is so important, especially today when things are getting a lot harder to do, like just in terms of in order to compete. I just think that you need to build that culture inside the office. So I say 5 days a week, but have ultimate flexibility.
That's fascinating. One last
people
question
are
I
gonna hate
have.
this answer, but
no,
God,
no,
I mean,
it's
people are
fine,
gonna
yeah.
hate the answer, but like, it is what it is. Like, that's how you build trust in relationships. We should default to humanity.
Yeah.
Humanity is about, working together, right? It's not doing everything on Zoom. And I believe there is a place for Zoom. We're doing this on Zoom. I think it's great.
Yeah.
You want to, we want to do this. It's on Zoom. You live in New York. I live in Canada. I think this is great that we're doing this. Not everything has to be this.
Yeah. And again, like if you were here, we would do it in person because like that's how human connections work. But one last question I will ask you is hypothetical scenario if like some kid is coming out of school right now, and this is going to be a really pessimistic picture, so good luck answering this. Let's say there's a kid who's graduating from college right now and he's looking around the headlines, what's going in the world, and it does kind of look grim. I work in news. There are a lot of newsrooms which are closing. Just recently, Sports Illustrated went out of business. Last year, we saw the death of Vice News. We saw BuzzFeed News going under. The industry is changing really fast. Google is laying off a bunch of people in the beginning of the year. So yeah, it's not the best picture ahead of a lot of folks who are graduating. On the other hand, if they want to go the social media route instead of, doing the corporate hustle, it looks really daunting. Social media right now is a lot of things. And aspiring to be a social media influencer or whatever you want to call it, there is no defined path there. And at the same time, they might be dealing with student debt, all that stuff. So it's really daunting, point being, for a kid who is coming into their early 20s, but they want to make a difference. They want to not only have a job, make a living, they also want to make a difference. What would be your advice?
Yeah, my advice early in your 20s is to don't optimize for status. The biggest mistake that I see young people do early in their career is they get out of school and they're like, I want to optimize for a title, seniority, salary, position. All these things are a status. When really I believe that when you're in your 20s, what you should be optimizing for is experience. It's for getting punched in the face. It's getting in a job that sucks your soul, because and learning from that, and learning from great managers and leaders. And I think that in your 20s is such an amazing time to learn about yourself. What do you like? What are you good at? What skills can I build? How do I build grit? How do I step into the fire every single day? How do I get myself uncomfortable? And so getting into a position in an environment that you may think that you like is a good start. Working for people that are highly driven, looking for people maybe even 10 or 20 years down the line, saying, I would love to work for that person, calling people up and saying, hey, I really admire what you're doing. Can I be your intern? Can I work in your office? And not optimizing for pay, not optimizing for status or seniority or experience or all those things that I call as status. You need to optimize for experience. And, I was really fortunate because I worked in a area that I was not good at and I sucked at, which was in accounting, but I went through the grind of it. I was in it for 2 years. and I got my designation. And then after that, I went into management consulting, which was incredible because you get punched in the face every day and you build these reps around seeing clients that you've never seen before, working for Fortune 500 companies, like just speaking in front of people that you've never seen before in a different country with very little experience or time. And you just compound that level of being in this uncomfortable environment. And I got lucky because I was in that environment. My thing is like young people should just enter into more uncomfortable environments because you learn about yourself, you learn skills, you learn what you're good at. And to me, that's my advice.
That's great. And I really like Naval Ravikant. He's like one of my favorite, like entrepreneurs writ large. He said this one thing about status is a zero-sum game, and in your early 20s, you shouldn't play zero-sum games. Instead, you should focus on positive-sum games. You should focus on stuff which you'll learn from, and those things matter, like at scale. And in my early 20s, I moved to America when I was 20 years old, and I thought I was optimizing my life for status. I thought I was getting a job. I thought I was going there for money and all that stuff. But I actually ended up optimizing for experiences and like doing really hard things really early in my career for whatever mediocre life I have now. So the point being, like optimizing, you might think sometimes that you're optimizing for pay or salary or status or whatever. But if you just like, now I have the advantage of hindsight, but more often than not, in your early 20s, I would say at least, it's really important for folks to like just do the hardest things they can, and hopefully they get some purpose and happiness out of it.
It's great advice. And I will say this because I'm turning 40 later this year.
Jesus,
so,
you don't look like a year over like 30. That's the Indian gene, I guess. Like, Jesus.
Wow. Well, I'm gonna tell my wife that. Okay,
I
so
think like
I'm turning 40 this year.
Yeah.
I got 3 kids.
Yeah.
God bless. Like
Yeah.
I have something that I absolutely love, and I feel like I'm in the 1% of, which is really great. But if I look at my peer group, people that are 40, and this happens to many people that are 40, they no longer have any dreams. They have optimized for status very early in their career. They optimize for experience, or they optimize for that title, that position, that salary. And now 20 years later, they feel that they're in a role or in an industry or in a profession that they don't get fulfillment from. So what they do at 40 is they find other ways to get fulfillment. They invest in things that, might give them money, or they go play pickleball. They have no fulfillment in their own particular career. And to me, that's a tragedy. I believe that everyone should have the chance, should have the opportunity to find something that they love to do, to find something that they are world-class at. And I believe that most people die at 25 years old. Most people die at 25 years old, or even 23 years old, because they are put on this assembly line and they can't get out. And they don't realize that their dreams die then. And when they're 40 years old, they have no more dreams. They're actually, they live for their kids, and now they're hoping that their kids have dreams. And I don't want anybody who's watching this that's 20 years old to get to 40 and say, I don't want that life. I want to do something that fulfills me, that I love, that I'm passionate about, and I don't want to die at 23 years old. And most people die at 23.
I don't know who said this, but like, most people die at 23 and they aren't buried till they're 80. And like that, like, I don't like that. Those kind of stuff like really sticks with me. I lied. I have another question for you, which is also a really insider baseball question. I want you to tell me the story of how and most people don't do this in their lives, which is getting a special on Apple TV and Amazon Prime. Tell me the story. Get as technical as possible.
Wow, get as technical as possible. So in my field as I would say a management thinker, there's not a single person other than, I would say, Brene Brown that has a special. She's got 2 specials. I think she's got a special on Netflix, and she's got a special on Amazon Prime. And I always looked at comedy specials. Like, I looked at comedians, and they were creating these incredible specials on and really blowing up the art of comedy. because of this special that was put on Netflix or in other places. And although I'm not a comedian, I'm like, why, back in the day, the philosophers, they were the real rock stars. Yet today, the philosophers are like, they're doing podcasts or they're doing keynotes at these client talks. They're like clowns now, right? They're like the entertainment. And why can't the philosophers be the rock stars, right? And so my belief was that I love this idea of putting out a special, putting out a tight, 40 minutes or an hour of some of your best ideas shot really well. And so I had this belief, and I said, I'm going to do this. I don't have the audience to do this. I don't have the skill to do this. I don't have people that have ever shot this. But I set a date in August of 2022 and said, hey, we're going to shoot a special. We're going to fill up a theater. And I clawed my way to filling up a theater, like getting my own friends and family and fans, of my book, which wouldn't fill out the entire theater. We didn't even fill out the entire theater, to God's sakes. I've been working with amazing production crew over the last number of years. We work particularly a lot during the pandemic. We shot all these virtual keynotes. They were in line. I said, guys, I want to shoot this special where it's like a 7-camera shoot where we can shoot it kind of like a comedy special, but instead of being comedy, it's kind of like a TED Talk with the screen sort of behind me. And we got together, we watched a whole bunch of specials and saw how comedy was done, and brought people. So once we had an idea of how we would shoot it and how the audio would work, I basically set the date. I created a fake event. I said it was my pre-book launch. I don't even know if anybody has a pre-book launch, to be honest with you. My book didn't even come out until like 3 months later. But the only reason why I faked the thing was because I wanted to shoot this thing. I had no relationships with Netflix, Amazon, Apple, nobody. I just knew that if I pitched anybody with this idea, everybody would say no. So I want to get the asset. Like, I want to create the physical asset so that it's already shot. And what I did like 2 years before, I've always had this idea. It was always on my like to-do list or like my notes, like, have a special like on a streaming platform. And I actually built a relationship with somebody. I had a call with somebody at Comedy Dynamics. It's a production house. They do a whole bunch of specials. I just wanted to learn how it worked. I got on a call with one of their lead distribution people, Anna, and she was great. And she's like, hey, if you ever think about shooting it, let me know. And she was probably thinking, this guy's never going to shoot a special. And after we shoot the special on that day, we did 2 runs, one without an audience and one with an audience. Now, like I said, it took so much to actually get an audience. So I wasn't able to even, like most comedians, they shoot like 3 or 4 different sets with different audiences, and then they compile it together and edit it together. I didn't have that. I only had like 1 shot to do it. So we shot one with an audience and we shot one without an audience. I think one of the X factors was we had this screen behind me, and I wanted to design it kind of like an iPhone. So like I got the Scenic Designer. I had this like cool like LED screen. I think one thing that I'm known for is like my motion graphics and like the scenery behind me. Like many people might see me on like these keynote stages with these massive screens, and that I take a lot of pride in that. And so we wanted to create something that was really unique. Anyways, we put all this stuff together, and after it was done, it went really well. And then we had this asset, right? And now I had to sell it. So I had a literary agent that was trying to shop at different places. Netflix said no, and I went back to Comedy Dynamics. I went back to them, like I talked to them like 2 years ago, and they're like, "Hey, I have an asset here. Here, by the way, is like a Vimeo link," and I sent it to them, and she was like, "Holy shit! Like you actually, this is crazy.
Made it,
like,
yeah.
You actually did it. Here's the trailer. Here's the video." And what's funny is that it took a year for us to like go through the entire process, insurance, like getting everything done and released. And so I was a little bit disappointed with like how far, like I just didn't understand the whole process about media entertainment. But we got it out. It was on Apple TV and Prime, and And yeah, super amazing experience and learning experience. And I would love to run it back. I would love to run it back and do it for another platform, another streaming platform, and do it bigger and do it better and do something that people have never seen before. And you know, I'm really so it was a great learning experience. And yeah, I mean, I can go through the technicalities of like
no.
the screen and the team.
That's great.
But yeah.
I think like the main lesson, the footnotes from that is like, A, you didn't take permission. B, you built the product and then you pitched it. And C, which is one of my favorite movies, which is Field of Dreams. And you had the playbook for that, which is build it and they will come. You made it, and people, and like it actually, and then they being the streaming platforms, you build it yourself and then you put it on the market. And as it turns out, now it's on Amazon and Apple TV, which is a huge accomplishment. I don't think most people like get how difficult it is, not only to produce something, but also put it for mass consumption. And I think that I'm just giving you all the credit that you deserve.
I appreciate that. It was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears and effort. And yeah, I really appreciate it.
Perfect. Sean Konugo, everybody. Follow him on every platform possible, and LinkedIn, most importantly, because that's where you'll get the most value out of him. And if you haven't already, go watch his special both on Apple and Amazon.
Thank you so much. Appreciate being on.